Hi, it's Penny here, and today I wanted to talk about some books that have cool AI in them. Now, when I say cool AI, I kind of mean either books that deal with it in a really fun way and have some fun AI characters, or books that are more philosophical and kind of look into those ideas of where's the boundary between a computer program and a fully conscious, intelligent life. So I think I'm going to order these from most fun to more philosophical. And we're going to start with Skyward by Brandon Sanderson. So this is a book series that is about this young girl named Spencer. She lives on this planet where they've never been able to leave because anytime they try to, these aliens attack them and they live in these caves under the ground. Spencer's father did run away from a battle, and in this culture that is very unforgivable, so her family doesn't have a lot of respect and she really wants to earn her place fighting these aliens. I didn't necessarily love the next books in the series as much, but Skyward is a lot of fun, and one of the most fun parts is M-Bot. So along the way, Spencer finds this spaceship that is run by this artificial intelligence called M-Bot, and M-Bot just has a really fascinating way of looking at the world. He says some things that are just so laugh out loud hilarious. He was my favorite character in the whole series. Actually, I've come to love Doomslug more, and M-Bot's jokes have gotten a bit sillier later in the series, but the first book, I loved it. It was super fun, but the story also has a lot of emotional depth. I do really recommend it. And I think it doesn't matter that the rest of the series goes downhill, because you don't need that part of the series, you know? It could have been a standalone if it wasn't for Brandon Sanderson always wanting to build an amazing complex world. Then I also want to talk about the Scythe series by Neil Schusterman. So this is a YA dystopian utopian. So in this world, basically there's no longer any death because they've solved all the problems that cause death. The problem they do still have though is overpopulation. So they have these people called the Scythes who are allowed to select people to die, and we're following a couple of characters who basically become candidates to become Scythes. Now, where AI fits into this series is that most of the world now is run by this artificial intelligence called the Thunderhead, and it's only the Scythes that are really making decisions about who should die, and every other decision about how the world is run is made by this artificial intelligence, and it does come through the later books to play a much bigger part in the story. In fact, the second book in the series is called Thunderhead. This is one where I guess the artificial intelligence is manipulating people to achieve what it wants to achieve, and I think in the end I like that element more than I liked the whole thing about having to choose who's going to die and people never having to die and getting to be reborn again. I thought I would have liked that part better, but I actually liked the artificial intelligence part better. Then we've got one of my most favorite graphic novel series, and that is the Descender series by Jeff Lemire and Dustin Nguyen. There is also a spin-off series called Ascender. So this series, basically what happened is humans have spread out all across the galaxies. We're all out in space, we're everywhere. And then these giant robots turn up and just kill a bunch of people, and in retaliation the humans decide they need to get rid of all the robots. So this is a world where they're very dependent on robots, so I think it's a little bit extreme, but that's what they do. And primarily we're following this young companion robot. He basically wakes up and his family is gone and he doesn't know where they're gone, so he goes to try and find them, even though since he's a robot it's very unsafe for him to go anywhere really. Actually, my most favorite robot in this series is Driller. Driller has to do some really awful things to survive in this world, and he's very emotionally traumatized by it, and I just love Driller so much. I just want a series with Driller living his best life. That would be for the best. Then we have The Monk and Robot Duology by Becky Chambers. I'm really hoping actually that this will be more than a duology because it's just so beautiful, and it could definitely continue. The second book didn't, to me, feel like a true ending, but also I don't think there's any more plans for any more books, but I'm just going to live in hope anyway. So this is about a world where basically the robots gained consciousness and they said, we would just like to go and live in the wild, out in the forest, and if you could never talk to us again, humans, that would be great. So the humans have to figure out how to live without robots. But then basically this robot comes back as a representative from the robots just to see how the humans are going, and it's so beautiful. We also have this T-Monk who's really struggling with what to do with their life. The T-Monk meets the robot and they just have some really beautiful conversations about what it means to be human, what it means to be a robot. It's just a beautiful story. I mean, actually the giveaway is that I own this duology physically and I hardly ever buy new books, actually new, but this series, I loved it, so It's beautiful. You should read it. Just a really great story about finding your place in the world, actually. Then the next one is a short story by a New Zealand author. So this is Genesis by Bernard Beckett. I say short story, it's like a novella, I think. So this is an apocalypse where basically New Zealand walled itself off from the rest of the world when everything started falling apart. I still have a lot of questions about how on earth New Zealand would ever afford that, because coming from New Zealand, I know we have a lot of infrastructure problems, and we definitely don't have money to be creating any big perimeter around the country. But anyway, we're basically following this young person as they go into their exam. We don't know much about what's really happening in the world, but their exam ends up being them telling this historical story about the founder of their colony, which is on this like walled off New Zealand. And we're kind of following in the story within a story, we're following this rebellious young boy and his interactions with this first artificial intelligence. I think to say anything more would definitely be spoilers. Even that is like on the border. And I do think that as a story, it's maybe missing a little bit in terms of plot, but the conversations about artificial intelligence and where that line is for becoming a conscious being, that part of the story is really interesting. And I think if you don't guess the twist, then the twist would also be a good one. Then we have the Bobiverse series by Dennis E. Taylor. So this is a really fun one as well, but also it gets very philosophical. So we have this man named Bob, very successful software engineer, and he's arranged so that when he dies, he'll be frozen. He dies, and then he wakes up and finds that his consciousness has been put into this self-replicating spaceship. And most personalities that have been put in this kind of situation haven't survived, but he does manage to have the mental dexterity, I guess, to handle this strange situation of being a spaceship. And he also then replicates himself, and there are multiple versions of him, multiple Bobs, although they take on the pattern of giving themselves different names. And they are basically firstly trying to save humanity, as the world is no longer going to be habitable very soon. But they're exploring the galaxy, coming across alien beings, and just dealing with very scientific problems. Sometimes these books are possibly a little bit too scientific for some people, although I will say, I think that if you read them and you don't understand the science, you can kind of just gloss over it. I just like the problem solving of it, even if I don't understand all the details. But especially the fourth book in the series really got into some ideas around artificial intelligence. Throughout the series, I think it's being investigated, but the last one was a lot more about it, as well as this weird thing with these like otter aliens. But anyway, Dennis E. Taylor is a software developer, and I really would recommend this series to software developers because I think it has the same mindset in terms of problem solving as a software developer often has. That's my recommendation. But I really love the series. It's not only a lot of fun, but it has some really interesting ideas. Oh, and the audiobooks. The audiobooks are amazing. I've read this whole series on audiobook, and that's the way I would recommend consuming it. Then lastly, we have a short story novella by Ted Chiang, so The Life Cycle of Software Objects. This is a story about these digital pets that are created, and we're mostly following their owners and their creators, but then as happens with software, they start to become obsolete, and the software life cycle continues, the new big thing comes out, and the question is, if these digital pets have basically they're intelligent, they can learn, are they like conscious beings? Where are the ethics in terms of like turning them off or replacing them with newer models, or what do you do with them? What do you do with these artificially intelligent conscious beings when they're no longer kind of the technological pinnacle that they were? It's a really emotional story, and it gets into some really interesting ideas. I really recommend it. I really recommend all of Ted Chiang's work, but this one in particular is very relevant to the theme of artificial intelligence. So that's all the ones I wanted to talk about today. Let me know if you've read any other books with great themes of artificial intelligence and consciousness, because I would love to get your recommendations or talk about any of these books with you down in the comments. Otherwise, thank you so much for watching. I hope that you are doing well, and I will see you next time.